Deadwood, Food Palace 1-1.
No movement on Sector 3 perimeter.
Food Palace 1-1, Deadwood actual. Move up.
Move up to the old farmhouse, Bravo 6. Maintain visual and report. Change channels, Rommel.
I don't know what it is. It's just static. We've done this a million times.
Copy. Going to Rommel.
Aside from my incredibly cheesy acting skills, there's a lot to understand about what's going on in this video. And in case you didn't get it, we're talking about poor man's encryption and keeping your tactical comms kind of private. This well runs deep. Buckle up. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. This time on K6UDA Radio. Let's do this. So I got a bitch. A lot of you preppers out there, including some of you high-speed, low-drag guys, you think nothing of spending thousands on weapon systems, cool-looking plate carriers and equipment like this, expensive headgear, night vision, Peltors, all kinds of stuff. And then you buy a $30 radio to do all your communications with. Well, I'm not here to try to sell you a bunch of expensive radio equipment, but I do want you to know that good mechanics buy good tools, good operators use good equipment, and you're only as good as the weakest part of your toolkit. I'm going to show you what better tools can mean for you in the field. But before we get way into this thing, I just want to ask you, if you like this video series, please hit that like button and give it a thumbs up. Also, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. It's free. It helps me out. Please do it. And if you see fit, please consider becoming a member, a sustaining member for as little as like $1 a month. I don't care. Anything helps, and everything goes right back into the production. Also, I do some more 2A concentric stuff over on Rumble. And if you really want to support the channel, go watch this video on Rumble. You've already watched the first part of it here on YouTube. Maybe you're watching it on Rumble. I don't know. But please, let's build an alternative place to watch all the videos. I don't want it all to be just political. I want it to be fun too. And I want everybody to be able to get in. So go over to Rumble, subscribe to me over there, go to Patreon, or I think I'm going to try setting up a locals. And back to the show. I want to talk about what I call encrypting the unencryptable. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we're going to be talking in codes. We're going to be using things like maybe one-time pads, Cherokee codes, channel hopping, digital radios like D-Star, fusion radios, DMR radios, P25 radios, and yeah, I am not advocating breaking the law. I'm not advocating violating Part 97 of the FCC rules. Part 97.113, parent 4, you can't do the following: music using a phone emission except as specifically provided elsewhere in this section, communications intended to facilitate facilitate a criminal act, messages encoded for the purposes of obscuring their meaning, except as otherwise provided herein, obscene or indecent words or language, false or deceptive messages, signals or identification. And I'm not advocating doing this other than the fact that hams do it all the time. When you're having a conversation and you say, you know, that thing that we talked about on the phone. Well, that's in a way obscuring, but hey, that's another bitch and another video. Now, I've always said radio should be like being a mechanic. You have the right tool for the right job. And there's other types of radios out there that you can use for different purposes. There's FRS radios, GMRS radios, MERS radios. That's another free, unlicensed radio system that you can use, and it's good to have in your toolbox. There's a lot of commercial radios available out there, and I'm not saying use them illegally, but Rugged Radio makes good quality commercial and GMRS radios. Motorola makes a lot of good quality stuff. There's cool stuff like this, the Celex radio systems. These used to be extremely popular with SEAL teams back in the early part of the 2000s. Yeah, and in case you were just curious about that Celex radio, here it is at the Crypto Museum. This thing runs on 1.2 gigahertz, which back then was like crazy radio frequencies that nobody could get a hold of. So why in the world would I want to pick something like this over the $30 radio that you could buy a dozen of these things and pass them out for? This does something that this can't do. And when I'm talking about digital, I mean digital voice, specifically for things like this or radios like this. This is a ICOM radio. This one does D-Star. This is a Bofang. This does FM only. That means that I could talk on this and talk to another guy that has a C4 FM radio over here or a D-Star radio, and this guy is not gonna be able to hear it. Hello. You can't hear me. You can't see me. I don't exist. Now, there's a lot of people who refuse to buy into the whole digital HT concept. They believe that these radios are dependent on the internet. And while they do use the internet to do all the fun stuff, to get into the talk groups and do the things that we like to do in good times, well, in bad times, these things can run autonomously. They can run in pairs between themselves, and the average radio, the average guy who's out there listening and trying to gather intel won't be able to hear those. So it makes that system an ideal tactical communication system. So if you're serious about your prepping and you're serious about your toolkit, the next question is, which one to buy? Do I want to buy a D-Star radio? Do I want to buy a C4 FM radio or a DMR radio? What do I buy? Well, now my opinion, and this is just personally my opinion, is I would find out what is used the most in your area and what is used the least. There's usually a favorite. Here in southern Idaho, the favorite is Fusion. And here's my Fusion radio. it seems like almost every repeater around here is equipped as a fusion repeater, which means there's a lot of these floating around. And if you're relying on the most popular when you're trying to do tactical communications, it means that there's more ears that can hear you. Two reasons that I had picked D-Star for my tactical communications. First of all, when we started this, when my group and my family started this journey, God knows how long ago, D-Star was really the only viable option to do what we wanted to be able to do. And so I picked D-Star. We used D-Star. We put it into effect. We still use D-Star. And it just so happens that D-Star is probably one of the least used modes of digital radio in my area now. So having enough tools in your tool belt that gives you the ability to choose the right tool is one of those key things. Sometimes the right tool could be something like this FRS radio, no license required. You could basically talk about what you want, when you want, and sometimes this higher end radio is what you want. Now, I'm not discounting the use of the $30 ham radio because these things can be unlocked. You can program some FRS and GMRS and MERS frequencies into these. You're not supposed to. It's illegal to transmit on them, but you can listen. But again, they won't do one big thing that these radios will do, and that is pretty much encrypt your communications from the other guys. You know, while most of the bad guys are trying to gather intel using their $30 radios because that's what they've got, the savvy prepper is going to spend a little bit extra money, and they're going to pick up something like this that they can pretty much knock out the $30 radios with as far as gathering intel on them. Now, all the bad guys are going to hear is static. And if they're not radio savvy, really, they're not going to know any better. They're not going to think anything about it. Now, that's not to say that every bad guy is potentially just an idiot that might have a $30 radio and can't listen to your digitally encrypted radio communications. No. One of the big things that I advocate is you don't want to overuse the digital. If you do, you're going to make inquisitive people more curious. So here's what I suggest. You're going to pick a few frequencies and you're going to do a lot of your everyday stuff on FM. That way, if somebody is monitoring and they can hear you, they'll hear that normal chitter chatter about, getting the eggs out of the hen house. And then when it comes time to do the tactical stuff, you're going to have brevity on the radio and you're going to switch over to the digital modes. The bad guys really won't know what hit them. That brings me to frequencies and hopping. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to program in a few frequencies that you're going to use as tactical frequencies into your radio. You're going to give them a code name. These frequencies should not be easily guessed frequencies. A beautiful thing about the ham radio over the FRS or straight GMRS radio is the fact that these have a VFO or a variable frequency oscillator, which means I can program in damn near any frequency that I want to program into this, and I could write it to the memory. My suggestion is you put together a set of frequencies that you can use for practice, and a set of frequencies that you want to keep for absolute mission specific kinds of stuff. Now you're going to want to practice frequency hopping, moving from one of these frequencies to the other. And yes, I'm giving away some of my up until today highly classified information, and that's mainly because my team is kind of in the wind. After moving to Idaho, I don't have the kind of support system and the kind of team that I used to have. So I will devise a whole new communications plan with whoever I end up teaming up with out here. All right, you're going to want to set up a code word or some kind of a secret squirrel method of signaling the other members of your team that it's time to go to the next frequency. Using these frequency hopping techniques along with digital communications is going to keep your bad guys at bay when you're doing whatever tactical operations you're going to be doing. Now you're going to want to program in several of these tactical channels into everybody's radio, and everybody on your team's radio should be programmed exactly alike. Now we get to power and antennas. And while it looks all cool to have the ABRI mounted to your plate carrier for longer range comms, in truth, you're going to be operating in small teams at short 25 to maybe 100-yard distances. Lowering your output power to the lowest possible setting on the radio and using stubby antennas, that is going to decrease your footprint and make it much harder for the enemy to hear you at all. Now, if you do have a need to use the ABRI antenna and have this thing stuffed in your plate carrier, or you've got one guy who's designated as the long range comms guy, and he's the one who's going to be communicating back with your base or your other group that are at a more remote location. That's when you might use something like this. Now, guys, I never said this was going to be a cheap proposition, but this is a good proposition. Like I said, man, these are the snap-on tools of the prepper world. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, if this gave you any kind of knowledge, please, again, give it the thumbs up. Please subscribe, leave a comment, share the video, share it in your prepper circles. I want to get the word out to more people who are like-minded, because wow, we just don't know where things are going to end up in the next 6 months, a year, even 2 years down the road, if we make it that far. And I'm getting serious doubts about that. So really, that's why I'm starting to pass on some of my previously top secret classified information in the hopes that some of you will pick up the mantle and do what needs to be done. Anyway, guys, that's all I got today. I'm Bob, K6UDA, and I'm out of here. 7-3.